This story about a hereafter is really unnerving. The narrative describes the experiences of two souls that died in the same car accident. One young woman who died in hell, and the other. Keep an open mind to the teachings this afterlife has to offer as you read this story. Before the NDE began, because of the suffering I have experienced at the hands of people who don't trust me, I would prefer to be nameless. It was more than 2 years ago, but I still clearly remember it. I was getting into my pal Gareth's car. His father owned the car, and he was never meant to have it. I have no idea how he obtained it. I remember that earlier that night he had drank some booze. It was late and I knew he shouldn't have been driving, so I needed a ride home. We had been having a fruitless argument on the way there. Enraged, he slammed on the throttle and tried a U-turn. In retrospect, I can see that it was merely a ruse to scare people into keeping quiet. That was his eccentric side. All of a sudden, I saw myself being carried on a stretcher into a big room. It felt like someone had given me a head and chest whack. The following is a somewhat lengthy list. I most definitely forgot to do it. My path to everlasting life. In a matter of seconds, I started to float out of my body and into an odd tunnel of light, giving me the impression that I was on some unusual substance. I had no idea where I was, and I was sucked somewhere I couldn't even begin to fathom. I was unable to stop or turn. It seemed like everything was fine for a little while. My perception of my approaching nirvana unexpectedly changed. By the time I got to the end of the tunnel, I felt as though lightning had struck me since I was falling quickly. I felt as if I had fallen headlong into a black hole because the sensation was that strong. I believed I could use a knife to carve it because it was so black. My descent was accompanied by cries, tears, terrible laughter, unbearable anguish, and the foulest smell conceivable. I saw flaming flames emerge from the darkness as I descended into a big furnace. A blazing fire overtook me. There were screams. I was shouting so loudly that I could not even determine where my sound was coming from. I landed hard, feeling as though I was on pebbles, and this new shape, whatever it was, started to hurt all throughout my body. I felt strange things tugging at me when I opened my eyes, letting me know I wasn't alone. One by one, they grabbed hold of me and started leading me in the direction of what seemed like massive black gates. I commenced flailing about, calling out for assistance from God, Allah, Buddha, or any other figure I could recall studying in my religious education lessons. However, nothing came of it. I can still clearly remember having the impression that a huge beast was grasping at my back with extremely sharp claws. Another started tugging at my hair, giving me a queasy feeling. This guy laughed and made fun of me while shoving me to the ground and stood on my chest. Sensitive subjects that he seemed to be aware of were my sister's jail, my mother's death at delivery, and the fact that my friend Gareth was driving the car that killed me. I can smell it clearly even now. It was just as disgusting as burned hair and decayed skin. Their vile laughter and barbs at me were almost drowned out by the boom of the flames. I heard screams at that point, and I saw people rushing in all directions. A group of kids no younger than 12 were terrified and torn apart by these horrifying monsters, and they let out cries. That's when I thought about Gareth, the man in the car with me. He was crucified and left hanging upside down, just like Jesus on the cross. That was something we had read in class a long back. Then, out of nowhere, the aliens began hitting him while chanting in a language I couldn't understand. The flames eating into the thing he was strapped to had begun to rip and melt his hands, chest, and head. It was clear from his expression that he was afraid. He sobbed and pleaded with them to stop. The fire that had been consuming this planet, or, if you will, my soul, began to burn through my body. I cried out, "God, please help me." Once again, when this occurred, every time I cried out in God's name, they attempted to hurt me much more. Their rage mounted, and with it their frustration and annoyance. "God, please." I questioned them just before I decided to give up. Suddenly, I was being drawn away from them by a strong suction, and I was being propelled through the tube. Following the near-death encounter, I was startled out of sleep by a female doctor's voice. She told me that after 2 hours of resuscitation, I had fully recovered, but Gareth had not. His heart stopped beating as they were allegedly attempting to revive him. It just gave up. He'd made his official death announcement 30 minutes earlier, before I arrived. After months of trying to explain everything in therapy, a Pentecostal Christian friend from college eventually gave me an explanation of what I had seen. She provided me with biblical verses that explained hell and the events I had seen during our 2 weeks of therapy. Finally, I stood in the middle of my college campus and gave my life to Jesus Christ. I swear, the awful stench of burnt flesh and hair is still with me. When I thought about Gareth and his whereabouts, I used to feel ill to my stomach. I promise I still know where he is and what I would do to keep his younger brother out of that place, even if he is now 14 years old. When I told my incident, folks in my family and social circle didn't believe me and kept telling me I had seen too many scary movies. Still, this was no movie. There were no credits or logos at the end. I apologize, this was a true occurrence. I address it to everyone who reads it, hoping it acts as a warning to those who have not placed their faith in Jesus Christ. After my near-death experience, I was made very clear about what happens to those who reject Jesus. I will always be grateful to God for providing me with this opportunity to serve Him again following a catastrophe that was fit for a movie or TV show. Everyone who is unsure, do not wait until it is too late to find out the truth. It was me. Now pray to Him in accordance with His name. Take immediate action. I am 22 years old. I figured I had a ways to go before something like that happened to me. Yes, I was nearly to blame. Whoever believes in God and His Son is blessed.